Serious, students who have dated their teachers, what's your story? I dated a law professor during the summer break after my first year. She was the spitting image of Lilith Sternin from Cheers, in looks, dress, and mannerisms. She had 20 years on me and was not someone I would have considered attractive at that stage of my life. It would be safe to say she was not well liked by most students. She had just gone through a very brutal and very public divorce. As I was walking out of class, she was standing at the lectern with a 1,000-yard stare and looking utterly dejected. I talked her into hitting the bar with some other students and a couple of professors. She got loose. I got loose, and we spent the next 3 months tooling around and fricking like bunnies. I blew off a summer internship to go screw around, which is probably why I ended up being a career public attorney, or not. Looking back, it was one of the happiest and most satisfying parts of my life. We broke it off amicably and remained friends right up until the time she succumbed to terminal illness a few years ago. I married my college professor. We've been together almost 20 years. I was over 21 and he was not yet 30. It was an independent study type course my last semester. I had to hint to him that I was interested. We went on a date and the rest is history. Not a scandal or big deal. My mom married her college professor. My dad, they're 12 years apart, didn't start dating until she was no longer his student, and remained incredibly happily married for 42 years until she died. Not a big deal at all. I turned 18 my senior year. My German teacher and I were always flirty before that though. He was married my junior year but divorced by my senior year. I slept with him 3 times. Found out I had chlamydia. Confronted him about it. He freaking knew about it. I got mine all cleared up and now he's married to some chick, probably still with chlamydia, and teaching English over in Dubai. Well then. Dated and married my general chemistry Tay. Nothing scandalous, though. We didn't start dating until a couple of years after the class ended. I had a huge crush on him throughout, and we'd run into each other a bit on campus and chat. Eventually we saw each other intentionally, then dated. During the class, I did go to a lot of tutoring, digging through my textbook for obscure crap to ask him. He's a good man. He always redirected our conversations back to chemistry when I try to get off topic. We laugh now because it was super obvious, and I actually did learn a lot from him. It's really strange to me that a lot of comments here are about TAs, because at my college the TAs are undergraduates too, so everyone's pretty much about the same age. Had a huge crush on my high school gym teacher. Few years after graduation Facebook came out and I looked him up. Still super hot. We met up for drinks. Then a week later he invited me to his place for dinner. It was a one-time thing. It was freaking awesome. Although now almost 10 years later he'll still text me thirsty as all heck. No regrets. Fake. Gym teachers are never hot. I dated a Tay when I was in college. It really wasn't too big a deal. She didn't grade the final paper, and most of the test's quizzes were multiple choice fill in the blank. So there wasn't really any way for her to show me preferential treatment. Just sat and listened to her read through the prof's PowerPoint slides and answer questions. We didn't tell the prof or anyone in the class, but we weren't exactly secretive either. I doubt anyone would have cared. It didn't really have a hot for teacher vibe, but the first few weeks were kind of fun, stealing glances and such. My story is a little bit different from the ones I've read here. I entered one of Brazil's most prestigious law schools when I was 18. On my first party, fresh out of high school, I met this beautiful girl who was 23 and on her last semester. We hooked up a few times but nothing too much. A couple of weeks later I drunkenly hooked up with a classmate and ended up dating her for 4 years. Fast forward to my final year and who is the professor? The same girl I had hooked up with when I got into uni. She had graduated, gotten her LLM and was finishing up her PhD thesis. A couple of weeks after classes had restarted, I broke up with my girlfriend and went on a night out with my high school friends. So no one from uni was there with me. It was carnival. So 5 days of parties. We hooked up again, and again, and again. We ended up kissing only each other during conval. Just to specify why this point is so important, all my friends kissed like 20 to 30 girls each. 1 week later I had classes with her. It was awesome. Everyone joked us because of our previous relationship, not having any idea that we were seeing each other again. That was in 2009. 8 years later, we're still stupidly in love with each other, with 2 boys, 3 and 1, and a girl on the way. I graduated with honors, got a master's degree, and am now studying to get my PhD. Sorry for my English, since it is not my native language. TLDR. Hooked up with a senior as a freshman. She graduated and became my professor. We hooked up again and got married. Everyone joked us. This is the only thing that gave you away as a not being a native English speaker. Your English was otherwise flawless. I slept with my student once. I was her TA for organic chemistry. She was 21 and I was 23. The sex was stellar and I told the professor of the lab that I couldn't be responsible for grading her paper. He gave me a wink and told me that's how he met his husband. We broke up at the end of the course, but I'll always remember her as the girl who ended my slump. One of my classmates started dating a professor and he eventually got her pregnant. She graduated before revealing their relationship and marrying him, but everyone knows it started during school. I might add, this isn't the first student the professor has fricked. Wasn't my actual professor. He taught computer networking, and I was in a liberal arts program. However, he was asked to do a workshop for our class. He had past experience with SFX makeup, and I was chosen as a volunteer to help him sculpt stuff. Went over to his place a few evenings, did the workshop, and a couple weeks later we were pretty much dating. I was 22 at the time, so personally I don't consider it very taboo. Glad to have met him. 3. I dated my high school history teacher year after graduating high school. We're still together 5 years later. It was awkward with my high school friends once we came out. He is the best man I've ever met and I'll definitely be with him forever. He's 10 years older than me, so we still have lots in common. I'd say the worst part is that going back to our hometown, still so many dirty looks. Wish they could just be happy for us. My husband was my senior English teacher. He was young and cute and I had a crush on him, obviously. He came to my high school grad party and gave me a card with a nice note saying that maybe we could get together for lunch before I left for college. We did. That was 16 years ago, so obviously the rest is history. I dated my college professor in my last few weeks of the final semester. She was extremely timid and shy, yet strangely attractive. I decided to ask her out after class one day to see what she would say. She told me it's an inappropriate thing to ask a teacher in a school, and that she would see me next week. She emailed me later that evening from her personal email saying that she couldn't answer me properly at the time, but that she was down to go on a date. We went on a few dates, dinner, drinks, etc. However, it did not last long as we were too incompatible on a personal level. Opposite ends of the personality spectrum, I guess. I broke it off after 6-7 weeks, and she didn't take it well. Luckily for me, I never saw her again, or had to have a piece of work graded by her. Although the way it ended did stop me from returning to the school to give a presentation about my dissertation to one of the classes. Definitely did not want to risk that extremely awkward situation. Had an emotional affair all through senior year of prep boarding school with my beautiful English teacher. She was 9 years older, petite, delicate, long straight black hair, pale translucent skin. She was lonely and felt vulnerable at the mostly male school. I was obsessed with her and it turned out the feeling was mutual, but we kept the physical dimension at bay until graduation night, when she pulled me out of a party and into the darkness outside and said she couldn't stop wondering what it would be like to kiss me. Off we went. I cannot tell you how explosive it was to finally go at it with an ideal figure you have been fantasizing about forever, but mostly experienced in a professional distant capacity. When the clothes came off, it was just transcendent. We dated for 2 years. She would drive up to see me in college on the weekends, and we would check into a $14 motel room and spend hours just undressing each other. Unbelievable sex. And at that age I was in unlimited insatiable mode all the time. It wound down because she was very wrapped up in an obscure academic career and the lives and fates of fringe 18th century poets, and pretty much expected me to share her sensibilities. And it turned out she had a younger sister with Downs who would require lifetime care, and she was quietly making plans for her and me, as a team, to shoulder the burden. I was 19. We parted as friends, more or less, but did not stay in touch. I know she went on to be a lit professor at a prestigious university, married another academic, and had a couple of very highfalutin books published. Student-teacher sex is always characterized these days as damaging and borderline assault, abusive to the student, etc. But I can tell you this relationship was one of the best things that ever happened to me, in bed or out. I was unbelievably lucky. Upvote for highfalutin. You don't see that as often as one should. My friend wouldn't date her teacher. He was married. Even though his wife was down with it, my friend constantly had to turn him down. They became friends and she went to hang out with him and his wife one night. After one drink she noticed that she was way drunker than she should be. She left immediately and came home to talk to me, her housemate. My ex had been roofied 2 times in Ottawa, so my experience told me that she was probably dosed with something and that it was very good that she left at the first sign of trouble. Girls, I feel sorry for you, having to put up with this kind of crap. What's worse is that his wife was in on it, helping him take advantage of a student. He now has a son. I really hope he does things right and teaches his son to be better than himself. Somehow. I don't know if I would call it dating, but we became friends and then it got weird. He was my summer class professor. The class he was teaching was all about radio and how it changed communication. I was the only one in the class who grew up listening to the radio apparently, so we had a lot of things to talk about. He let me know that he has the key to the big auditorium on campus and asked if I wanted to sneak in during the weekend to watch The Godfather Part 2 and I was like, SHYAH. So, we did, and we hung out a few more times after that. Then he got super drunk one night and cried and said that he feels closer to me than most of the other people in his life. I hugged him and he tried to turn the hug into something more, but I gently let him know that this was not a good idea. He was a little hurt, but we got over it. Now he's a friend I talk to every now and then, but I will always love our weird and awkward friendship. When I was a sophomore in high school I started hooking up with my early 20s substitute teacher. It was a weird time in my life and at that point a huge fantasy of mine, as it might be for other teenage boys. It started in my algebra class. I was the resident class clown and talked a crap load for no reason other than interrupting the flow of class. She was really hot, and my friends and I were discussing her features when I decided it was a good idea to strike up a conversation with her. This was mostly to impress my friends and I didn't consider that she would react to my hitting on her. I think I asked her if she wanted to get a burrito for lunch one day and she responded with talk to me after class. My friends thought I was in deep crap, but the way she looked me in the eye and engaged seemed out of the ordinary. Fast forward a couple weeks. She is still subbing my class and we have hung out a couple of times. Hikes and food and the like. Frankly I was astounded by these turn of events and was in somewhat of a confused stupor. I didn't really pick up on her advances until my birthday, when she invited me to her house and gave me an eighth of purple and a vibrating dong ring. She said we should use it sometime. I was freaking out inside but trying to act like Cary Grant or something. She informed that her biggest fantasy was to have a student go down on her while she wore her teaching clothes. I obliged in a very clumsy manner to say the least. I stupidly broke up with my girlfriend of a year and began to invest time into this odd situation. She was a Diablo Cody sort of character. She was a stripper on the side and had several sugar daddies that would take her on vacation but she would not allow them to touch her. I would see her downtown with these dudes and have to pretend like I didn't know her. She introduced me to Arrested Development, Mr. Show and other comedic stuff that shaped my interests nowadays. She wanted to write about her experiences and I agreed that it would make a good story, like I'm doing now I guess. Oh, she also had a sex swing. My mom caught wind of this and eventually got her teaching credentials stripped. She didn't get in any legal trouble but definitely stopped talking to me. I'm friends with her on Facebook and I think she does improv in NY City and not much else. I've never written about this and kinda forgot about it to be real. I was stoked at the time but looking back it was pretty inappropriate. I'm pretty sure she was lying about the sugar daddies not touching her. There's no way there was no sexual aspect to those relationships. At least I've never heard of one. He was an intern teacher, last year of university. He was pretty much a teacher by then. He was 24, I was 17. Last year of high school. We waited till summer to start hanging out, but we clearly already had a crush on each other in class. I thought I was mature at the time, but in retrospect I wasn't really. I looked up to him and was devastated when his views did not align with mine. Sex wasn't great because I did not know what I liked and did not want to talk about it. It was an okay relationship that lasted 2 years, but I always felt like I was not old enough for the relationship, for his friends, for his parents, etc. Then I was studying to become a teacher too, and we had a discussion about dating students that made me very uncomfortable. I went in a class, looked at the kids that were 4 or 5 years younger than me, and decided it is very weird to fall for one. We split. He's still dating a girl like 10 years younger than him. I'm 25, and I think 19-year-old are very immature kids, and I would not want one as a partner. It was good while it lasts, but I'm still weirded out. Would not recommend. I dated one of my TAs early in college. She was very pretty and I thought I had no chance. During review sessions I would give her a hard time and apparently she found it funny and charming. Who knew? Because she asked me out as the semester wound down. She helped me on my final paper a little, but she also took my virginity, so it was a nice end to the semester for that class. Whenever I ask my TA hard questions, she just grunts and complains to the professor. I'm dating my self-defense instructor. I'm in my mid-20s. He's in his early 30s. So the age difference is bigger than I'm used to, but we're still well within the age/2+7 rule. Whenever I take one-on-one classes with someone within like a 20-year age gap, there's like a 50% chance I'll get a crush on them, regardless of sex. It's kind of pathetic. I'm so used to it at this point. Usually I just ignore it. I guess there's something really hot about seeing someone who's really talented at something I wish I was better at. Can you explain the age/2+7 rule? I dated my high school English professor. There was a 15-year difference. It was after I graduated. Before I graduated, we had some sort of relationship. We never talked about inappropriate things, but I suppose the fact that we spoke at all would be considered inappropriate. The fact is, I struggled with depression my sophomore year, and he was the only one to recognize it and ask me if I was okay. He was honestly my best friend for several years, and we chatted constantly. A couple of weeks after I graduated, we took a trip a couple of hours away. I think I kinda thought there would be flirting involved, but I never thought it would turn out the way it did. We actually had a really great day, going to parks and comic stores and dinner. After dinner, we got ice cream and sat down. He rubbed my shoulders and kissed my head, and I remember him saying, "I think we both know how this is going to end up if we hang out more." He left for a trip to London a couple of days afterwards. When he came back, we saw each other again and started sleeping together. He would drive up to my college apartment almost every weekend to spend time with me. Eventually, things fell apart. After about a year, I needed more, and we both knew this was only temporary. Despite us both expressing more than sexual feelings for one another, things soured once my new boyfriend, now an ex, couldn't deal with us still talking, because we were still best friends, and threatened him without me knowing. We didn't talk for a couple of years. My husband now knows and doesn't particularly care about me speaking with him, but now he's also about to get married and I guess his fiancée would have a problem. I guess that's understandable. We saw each other this weekend. We were at the same concert. We briefly made eye contact and waved. It made me feel really sad. Although I am completely and 100% in love with and dedicated to my husband, I still mourn losing a friend who got me through so much. Although the dating was really fun, I knew it would end. Back then, I just never thought that our friendship would cease. In 11th grade, my math teacher and I were madly in love. She was 24 and I was 17, and one day she told me to stay after class when normally I would go to lunch. Once we were alone, she told me she had dreamed about me the night before and asked if I was serious with my girlfriend. One thing led to another and I fell deeply in love with her. One day her husband showed up to class to drop off some keys to her and I was so scared. This was in 1997, so I didn't have a cell phone but just a pager. She would send me encoded messages. The number 17 meant she was thinking about something we had done. 10 meant she missed me. 314 meant to go to her classroom. The doors all had glass windows on them but hers was covered in math facts so the room had privacy. It was a very good year. Currently dating my former high school chemistry teacher if that counts. He was very popular amongst students then, and still is now, even after he quit last year. It's only an 8-year difference and we never really talked when I had his class his first year teaching. Long story short, teachers tend to be good at putting up a front in regards to their anxiety and depression. That took a turn. Took a French immersion and flight attendant course when I was 22 and the French teacher was a 35-year Acadian, Eastern Canada French, very attractive musician with an accent and perfect hair. I was top of my class and the most mature student he had. Everyone thought he was gorgeous and I made extra effort to chat with him after class to get to know him. After the course I took the risk to ask if he wanted to get coffee. I said as friends but really I wanted to get behind his zipper. A couple coffees and drinks later we were sleeping together. It lasted a summer then we broke it off. When it ended I was determined to rebound so I asked my current boyfriend out for drinks. Now we are buying a condo together. The best story from that summer was when he left for 2 weeks to teach a camp and left his fleshlight out in his dish rack to dry. This was 3-4 weeks in. Then realized his parents were going to stay at his place while he was away. To avoid the super embarrassment of explaining that to his elderly mother, he asked me to go and move it. I made it only slightly embarrassing for him. Not so much dated but she was my 8th grade English teacher. She and her husband had a house on the lake where I lived. Her husband worked all week and would only come down on the weekends. My friend and I saw her one day while skiing. She asked us to stop by later that evening. She had beer. She was in her early 30s. That night we just talked about the previous school year, and my friend and I got drunk and passed out on her couch. She asked us back that evening. We grabbed a beer and she whispered to me, "Don't drink too much tonight." When my friend passed out on the couch, she asked if I wanted to go to the bedroom with her. Of course I did. We had sex 3 or 4 times a week for the next 2 months. A couple of times twice a day. After the summer was over I went to high school, a different school, 9th grade, and never saw her again. The next summer we went by her lake house and someone else answered the door. She had sold it. I was in college. The professor was a total rake. I mean, everyone knew what he was like. He waited until grades were in and called to ask me out for coffee. It was nice, but nothing special. I went out on my first date with my now husband that very weekend. No regrets. Wasn't me, but when I was in military school, one of the seniors hooked up with a social studies teacher on a weekend field trip. Long story short, his buddy wanted to get in on the action too, and when she refused he told on them. She got fired, but the kid was 18 so no legal trouble. I know she was married too, so probably not anymore. Dang, what a cockblocker. Not my story, but my boyfriend, his mother met his father, her German teacher, in high school. They married, got 3 kids and then divorced after 8 years. So his mom was about 13 when they met. He was 30ish. My sister, 17, who could do no wrong. I'm not bitter, you're bitter. Started spending a little too much time with her basketball coach English teacher, 40s. We lived with different parents and I never liked her, so I didn't pay much attention. But then, one Christmas she just leaves to go spend part of Christmas with him, his wife, and his children. Dad caught on. Mom ignored it. After graduation they started dating and he divorced his wife. They got married without telling anyone and unsurprisingly the family was not happy, but sister still didn't see anything wrong. But then, he became emotionally, physically abusive. She never said it outright but it was obvious. She did the whole leave and go back thing multiple times. She's currently with a roommate of a year or so out of his house and dating a new guy, 50 sigh, but I don't think they're technically divorced. Her official statement for the breakup was that he didn't want more kids. Dude, your sister got groomed. Late to the game, but here's a good one. Handsome guy just out of college spends a year teaching in a small mining town in Colorado to make money to go to med school. Part of the job is coaching the girls' basketball team. One thing leads to another and he winds up marrying one of the girls, a tall center on the team. After much whispering and innuendo, off they went to the big city of Chicago. Him for med school at Northwestern, her at the Art Institute of Chicago. My grandparents in 1914. They were happily and prosperously married for 60 years until he passed away, and she followed soon after, mostly of a broken heart. I never did anything with a teacher, but if I hadn't been a 12-year-old with a laptop who overexposed herself to crime documentaries, something may have happened. When I was in grade 7 or 8 we got a new teacher partway through the year. He was really nice and quite attractive. He was married and had a son who was about a year younger than me. A lot of the girls had a crush on him. I got along with him really well, and he was one of the first teachers I remembered who I liked to have conversations with. He was witty and sarcastic, a sense of humor I picked up and that sticks with me to this day. What it took 12-year-old me a while to figure out was how he would treat me different than the other students. He would give me extra time on assignments, spend more time with my group of friends on field trips, would take any opportunity he could to touch me, not sexual, like a pat on the back or a hug, and buying me drinks from like Starbucks. Eventually, me being paranoid, I told my parents about how he was treating me and they took it up with the school. I don't know what happened after that. No one ever told me. My brother had him for half a year the next year and then he vanished. No one knows where he is or what he's doing. He hasn't done any teaching since my brother had him, and no one can track him online. That's creepy as heck. Usually they prey on high schoolers, but preying on middle schoolers is even worse. I just finished my first year of law school and was slated to study abroad in China that summer, so a classmate suggested we take a basic Mandarin class so we know some of the basics before we go there. Sounds like a good idea, so I sign up for it and notice the teacher is a cute, relatively young Chinese woman. At the end of the class I start talking to her and friend her on Facebook. We keep chatting and she invites me to her party she was holding. I go, we hit it off, and keep hanging out. Eventually I kissed her, she kissed me back, and we were dating. I had a great time with her, but then she moved back to China. She's the one who got away. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.